All right. So, as a reminder, what you're going to do to take notes for this lecture, so you're going to grab a Google Doc or a piece of paper. You're going to divide that paper into two columns. One column you're going to title terms, the other you're going to title definitions. So, for this lecture, the terms will be in yellow, the definitions will be in pink. Please upload your notes for full credit for this assignment. All right. So today we're going to be talking about externalities. So what are externalities? Let's answer that question first. So when markets are functioning well, all the costs and all the benefits of a transaction for a good or service are absorbed by the buyer and the seller. So there's no third party involved. So for example, if you buy a donut, you pay the cost for the donut and you obtain the benefit of eating it. The seller pays the cost of production and then benefits from the profit that they gain when you pay for the donut. There's no third party affected here. However, this isn't always the case. All right, so externalities are when the costs or the benefits of a transaction spill over to a third party. So make sure you write down externalities is the term, and then that pink part is the definition. So this third party can be either another individual, a group, or it can be society as a whole. Externalities can be either positive or negative. So negative externalities are when the cost spills over to a third party. So negative externalities, that's the term you're going to write down, and then that pink part is the definition. So as an example, suppose that a company manufactures products that benefits consumers. So if the market were functioning correctly, all the costs and all the benefits would be borne by that company and by those consumers. However, suppose that this company pollutes and produces toxic runoff that's dumped into a nearby river. Thus, part of the costs of production are being shifted to society as a whole. So society, not the company, will have to pay the cost of having unsafe water. So people might drink that water, they might get sick, they might develop long-term health consequences. So they're bearing the costs, not the company. All right, let's take a look at some examples of negative externalities. So suppose that a new nightclub opens up and plays loud music at all hours of the night. Neighboring businesses lose customers because of the noise pollution. So in this example, what third party is paying part of the cost? All right, so if you said those neighboring businesses, you are correct. So the initial two groups involved in this interaction, right, are the nightclub and the people who go to the nightclub, right? So these neighboring businesses, they are a third party that's being negatively affected. They are paying part of the cost. They are losing customers because that nightclub is polluting with noise. All right, next example. UC Santa Cruz admits more students than it has space to house them. This increases rents in the city of Santa Cruz, pricing out some locals. In this example, what third party is paying part of the cost? All right, if you said Santa Cruz locals, you are correct. So again, the initial two parties involved in this interaction are the University of UC Santa Cruz and the students, right, that it admits. Those locals have nothing involved with this interaction, but they're the ones paying the cost, right? They're the ones paying the higher rents. All right, so as we mentioned, right, one of the roles of government is to correct negative externalities, right? So negative externalities are a kind of market failure, which is a situation in which goods and services are inefficiently distributed in a market. So make sure that you've written down market failure as your term and those words in pink as your definition. So the government has two strategies through which it can correct negative externalities. So the first one is regulations, and then the second one is what's called market-based solutions, and the biggest example of that is taxes. All right, so for regulations, term regulations, and then you're going to write down the definition in pink. And the definition there is that the government can impose rules on companies that prohibit or discourage negative externalities. So for example, if a factory is emitting pollution into the environment, so it's emitting CO2 or something like that, the government can limit or set limits on how much pollution that factory can emit. So this is written into law. Another way that the government can respond to negative externalities is through market-based solutions or taxes. So that's going to be the term you write down. And then the definition is that the government can impose negative monetary incentives, remember that from Unit 1, in an effort to discourage negative externalities. So the government can impose a tax on certain products in order to discourage negative externalities. So the government can, for example, impose a tax on cigarettes to prevent secondhand smoke from getting other people ill. Now, just like there are negative externalities, there are also positive externalities. And positive externalities are when a benefit spills over to a third party. So, again, write down positive externalities as your term, and then when a benefit spills over to a third party as your definition. So, for example, you benefit from taking economics because it will help you fulfill a graduation requirement and it will help you make well informed choices. However, there's a third party that benefits from you personally taking economics, and that's society as a whole. So, society as a whole is going to benefit from your well informed choices. So, the choices you make at or the choices that you make at the voting booth, right? Society as a whole is going to benefit if you make good choices. So, just like we did with negative externalities, let's look at some examples of positive externalities. So, suppose that you bike to school instead of driving. Think about that. What third party in this example gets some of the benefits? All right, if you said society as a whole, you are correct. So when you bike to school, you get benefits, right? But society as a whole will benefit from the fact that you are not polluting the environment, your car is not emitting CO2, right? You are taking an environmentally friendly way to go to school. Next up, a hospital requires that its employees get a flu shot. What third party gets some of the benefits? If you answered something like the patients at the hospital, the employee's family, you're absolutely correct. So the initial two parties involved in the interaction are the hospital and the employees, right? But because of the way flu shots work, right, the employees won't get sick from the flu, but also they won't spread the flu to their patients. They won't spread the flu to their families. All right, so just like the government can discourage negative externalities, the government can also encourage positive externalities. And there is one tool that they can use to do this, and those are subsidies, which are another type of market-based solution. And you've already learned what subsidies are, right? So subsidies are, write this term down, then write the definition. Subsidies are payments that lower the cost of production of a good or service, which incentivizes firms to increase production of that good or service. So last unit we said the whole point of subsidies, or one of the points of subsidies, is to increase the supply of a good or service, right? By lowering those production costs and incentivizing businesses to make more of that thing. So governments can and often do combine strategies, right? So they can discourage negative externalities and encourage positive ones at the same time by using a mix of those strategies, right? So they can use taxes, they can use subsidies, they could use regulation, all in combination with each other. So for example, if a society has the goal to promote public health, the government might impose a tax on unhealthy products like soda, or set a regulation that limits the amount of sugar that can be in a soda. Then, at the same time, they can take the tax revenue, so the money they earn from imposing a tax on unhealthy products like soda, and they can use that to fund a subsidy for farms that grow fruits and vegetables.